Hey there YouTube fans, AC Productions here, and today I'm going to be showing you on how to install this first gear heat troller. Now if you live in a state like me, a state or a country that has cold, like for me here in Chicago we have one of them being the cold. And for most riders, you know, it kind of stops us from riding really, but you know, there's just days that you just want to get out there and ride. And I came across this at my local motorcycle shop. And I found out that they actually have specific gear for cold riding. So I've actually worn tons of inner liners, thermal liners, sweaters, and everything. And at the end, after putting my riding gear on, it was very difficult for me to move around on the bike. It just like made me feel really stiff, and the ride wasn't comfortable at that point. I did want to ride, but being uncomfortable riding just to go and ride, it's not fun. So when I found out about this gear, I was really happy. Now with having this gear on, with the parts that I bought the liner jacket, liner pants, and liner gloves. The other accessories it comes with, it also comes, if you wanted to buy, you could actually buy gloves and socks, but I didn't get those because pretty much the gloves I have are pretty decent. I just need the inside liners to keep my hands warm. So with having this product, you're going to be able to ride all year round, especially in the colder riding season, or in the colder season, you'll be able to ride more comfortably. So when I came across this, what's called heated gear, so pretty much it's like a liner that's, you know, has this like thermal wire that gets connected to your battery. And with this, what they call a heat controller, which is a heat controller, you're able to actually regulate the heat of your clothes. And I thought that was amazing. So I actually bought it. I bought the heat controller, which I'm going to show you today on how to install on your bike. And the way I'm going to install it on the bike is going to be seasonal. So I'm not going to really put it on there permanently. I'm going to have it where I could actually disconnect it from my bike and put it away for the summertime season. And then again, once it becomes a little bit colder, maybe end of fall, a little bit early winter, I'll put it back on the bike in a way that I'm able to plug it in pretty quickly. So I'm going to show you the tools and everything necessary to do this installation. I'm also going to try to keep it under an hour. It is going to be a little bit of a time consuming just because we're going to actually make a custom bracket for this heat roller to go on. And as soon as we get to the bike, I'll show you what I mean. But for now, let me show you the tools and everything you're going to need to do this installation. Okay, so this is going to be everything that you're going to need to do this installation. And like I said, we're going to be doing a custom bracket for this heat roller to go on. So starting from the left, we're going to need some plasti dip because we're going to be covering our metal sheet over here. So we have our black plasti dip. It's a matte black finish. We have our heat roller. Then over here we have a sheet metal at 16 gauge. That's what you're going to need. This specific size is a 12 by 12, a 4mm Allen key, 5mm, and a Phillips screwdriver. Those are just bits, but if you have the actual Allen or hex key, that works great too. Also, you're going to need a little extension for the 5mm Allen key, marker, black one, heat shrink tubing, electrical tape, zip ties or cable ties, and then this is just a piece of cardboard, or like, you know, either you want something that's not paper but just like a light piece of cardboard. I found that laying around, so we're going to be using that. That's going to be so we can make our template for cutting before we start cutting on the sheet metal here. Scissors and wire strippers, and then your handle for the little hex keys. Also, since we are going to be making this as a seasonal kind of connector or connection for the heat roller, if you bought a battery tender for your bike and you haven't been riding prior to this video on the colder seasons, you're going to notice that your battery tender comes with these gator clips and this connector. If you have no use for these gator clips and you're never going to use them, like I'm never going to use these for any reason, especially with my bike. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut this connector, because this is the connector we're going to use for this installation. But there is another way to connect this if you wanted to make it more permanent on your bike, and it would just be on your bike all the time. But for me, if I'm not going to be using it in the summertime, there's no need for the device to be on the bike. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this connector, and I'm just going to cut it here, and we're going to use this style connector to connect it to our bike. In addition to the installation, we're going to need paste flux, soldering iron, and rosin core solder. So when we splice into those cables, we're able to solder it and make that our connector. Okay, so now let's see what comes in the package of our heat roller. So let's open up the package and through the back here. Oh, by the way, the heat roller is waterproof. If you ever get caught in the rain somehow in the wintertime, maybe where you live, it gets cold but it doesn't snow, it actually is waterproof. So as you can see right here, it says that the heat roller is waterproof and can be left on the bike pretty much all the time. Okay, so besides that, here is the heat roller. The one that I got is a dual heat roller, meaning that I'm able to control two parts of my garment at different temperature settings. So for one, I'm going to actually have one of it connected to my pants, and the other one is going to be connected to my jacket and gloves. So if I wanted my pants at, you know, not too cold, not too hot, I could set it there. And if I want my jacket just a little bit more, I could actually turn up the heat on the jacket a little bit more. So that's the good thing about having a two controller system. This is how it looks like. Here's a close-up. And also when you, as soon as you turn on the system, when you turn it on, you hear that little click. You're gonna see the little indicator lights over here once you turn on the system. Alright, then here's the cables. Now these two is going to be cut according to the red and yellow here. So you have red and yellow here. This is going to connect to the power. And over here we have our other connector that connects with this one. So these two pieces, one's going to connect to your jacket, one's going to connect to your pants. But that'll be for a different video. That won't be in this video. This video is just to show you how to install this heat roller. So we got this as the control box. Here's the power connector. Now that one is it's going to connect to this next cable that you have in the package. And this next cable actually has an inline fuse. So here's the inline fuse. If you open it, it's a 15 amp fuse that's already in here. And then it comes with the positive and negative cables, has these loops so you could actually connect it straight to the battery if you like. But in this installation, we're not going to be using this. We're actually going to use our different connector. Then here's the part that actually connects to the other part of the heat controller. So here is our heat controller. Here's the power plug. Here's the other part of that plug. Plug it like so. And then this part would connect straight to the battery. But like I said, we're not going to do so. We're going to connect it in a different way. And let me show you the other plug that we're going to actually use. Okay, so this is going to be the plug that we're going to be using. I already gone ahead and I've already cut the length that we're going to be using. After that, I use the wire strippers to get enough wire to be exposed. But I'll show you how to connect all that in a little bit. So, and on this section, like I said, if you want to connect it straight to the battery, you can. It's pretty easy. And all you would need to do is just find a spot to put your heat controller if you want to do it a different way. But in this installation, we're going to be showing you how to make a custom bracket. And I'll show you on the spot of the bike that we're going to do so. But for here, just to give you an idea what we're going to do, we're going to snip these little eyelets off. And we're actually going to connect these. And we're going to solder our wire in line here. And this is going to be our connector. Now you're asking where we're going to be connecting this. Well, I already have a battery tender connector onto this bike. So I already have that on. And this is where I have my connector. I usually have it tucked in here when I'm riding. And then as soon as I get home and plug in my connector, all I do is I just grab it here and pull it out and I plug in my battery tender. Since I already have this plug and it's already to the bike, that's why we got this one. We're going to go ahead and connect this one to here, and we're going to have our wires nice and neatly tucked away inside the bike, and therefore that's how we're going to have this connected. And then once riding the cold ridings, or not riding season, but as soon as the cold season is over, I'll be able to disconnect this, take this controller off of the bike and put it away for the summer. And then once again, cold season comes again, go ahead, put this back on the bike, connect this back on the bike, and then we're good to go to continue riding even during the colder season. So this is the connector we're going to be using. So we're just going to snip this out, but I'll show you how to once we get there. Put that off to the side. Now we're going to find a spot on the bike that we're going to connect this device. Okay, now looking at the front of the bike, you want to have this heat roller. We'll just call it controller. You want to have this controller somewhere where it's going to be easily accessible, and especially with your riding gloves, on being able to access the controls. So upon looking at the bike, I was thinking of actually removing this piece and putting it over here. That would actually be perfect because then it will just sit in there pretty flush. We'll glue it on there and we'll have access. Now, when I actually was testing it prior to doing this install video, I found out that would not be a good spot just because the cable length of this cable wouldn't be enough to actually get to your garments. So especially your pants and your jacket, you are moving around on the bike, you know, turning the handlebars when you're making turns, and this actually gets easily disconnected. So you want to be able to put it on a spot where you actually have a little bit of slack and not have to worry about that, because if you're out there riding when it's cold and this gets disconnected, trust me, you're gonna feel cold pretty quick and it won't be very pleasant. And especially if you're riding on the highway or whatever, you don't want to have to pull over, plug it back in, and then make a small slight turn with your handlebars and have it disconnect again. So that's the reason why we want to have this as close to our body as possible. I was thinking of actually putting it right here, right by the gas tank filler cap here, but I don't know, it just kind of looks like it would be it's too like exposed there, and I don't know if I'll be able to, you know, with the gloves and everything being too close there, and it doesn't look that great. I want it to be somewhere where maybe it's more upright, that way I could actually get a more firmer grip on the knob to turn it. So the next spot I was thinking was right here in this little curve area. So I think we're actually going to do it there. I think it fits perfectly, as I was doing a test fit earlier. So we would put it like so, and it's right here in the middle. Still have access right here to get a good firm grip on the knobs, even with gloves on, and it still clears the handlebars. So as you can see, if I have the handlebar turned all the way, we still have at least 0.5 millimeter of clearance. And then if we were to turn the handlebars the other way, so I could turn it here. So even if we turn it in all the way to the other side, we still have at least 0.5 millimeter of clearance on this side too. So I think right here would be a perfect spot. So that's where we're going to go ahead and install our heat controller. Also forgot to show you that on the other side of the packaging that it does come with a Velcro strip. We might use it, we might not, but we'll see, because once we do our custom bracket here, we're going to need to have that heat controller as close to the bracket as possible. So I don't know with how thick that this Velcro is, as you can see, that we might have some clearance issues or not. I don't know, we'll see if we have any clearance issues if we install this Velcro tape onto the heat controller. But as long as we're on the subject here, as you could see, it actually shows you the garments that you're able to buy when you get this heat controller. So there is a few different types of heat controllers. So as you can see here all the way on the left, there is the dual portable. I don't know why it says portable, because you can't take it anywhere. It has to be connected to the bike. So this is the one I have, and this is the one where you could control 2 garments. Then there's the single. On this single one, you could still have, you know, the pants, the jacket, and everything, but it would all be in one temperature. You won't be able to separate the temperatures of the top and bottom garment. So on the single one, it's a 1 temperature thing, as opposed to this one being a 2 temperature. So on this one, you could, you know, have 2 different heat settings on top and bottom or whatnot, and this one's a single. And then over here, you have a wireless system. The reason I didn't select this wireless system is because if I'm riding, I'm not going to sit there and dig in my pocket while on the highway or on the street to try to, you know, turn the knobs, because if I take out the remote, if I somehow lose my grip and I drop the controller on the street, well, there goes that. So that's the reason I didn't select that option. But also with this, you could also probably put this on the bike somehow and maybe put it on the handlebars over here or whatever. But also this would take batteries, and I don't want to be going through batteries. I'd rather just, you know, use the power of the bike. Then, so that's the dual wireless. Then you have a single wireless, same thing as I mentioned before. And then over here you have a single remote receiver with 5-level button. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I didn't check that out. So here at the bottom, this is what I had bought. I had bought the liner jacket, liner pants, and liner gloves. These are the full glove. I bought the liners that go inside these kind of gloves. But if you want, you could also get regular gloves and socks. I didn't get the socks either, so I just got inner liners of the gloves, jacket, and pants. If you don't want to get the heated socks, you get these heated insoles to work with the first gear system. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this bolt right here, and that's going to take a 5mm hex key or Allen key. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to take that out. Once you take this out, we're going to grab our cardboard paper, and we're going to get a marker. And what we're going to do now, we're just going to cut like a template of this little area here, because we want to make sure that we cut one time on our sheet metal and not cut a whole bunch of times. So we're just gonna get our any kind of cardboard sheet of paper that you have laying around. I just happen to have this one laying around, and right now we're kind of just gonna put it over here and we're gonna guesstimate for now on what we're going to be cutting. So I'm going to just kind of follow a line and just go like this, and same thing here. And what we're doing, we're just going to kind of guesstimate of where we're going to be cutting. So just go ahead and make your marks and then get your scissors and cut what you just made. Okay, after you cut your paper, just gonna go ahead and we're gonna put it against here, and at this time we're actually gonna fold it. So I guess we will just fold it right about there, I would say, because this is how our template is gonna look like. This is how actually our bracket's gonna look like with the sheet metal. We're gonna have a curvature right here, which is gonna go against this area here. Gonna have a hole in the middle for the bolt to go right in there, and then this part of it's actually bent metal. We're gonna bend the metal to have a surface for our heat roller to go on. So right now we're just going to check to see fitment, and it looks like we need to make it a little bit more rounder there. So you want to just go ahead and start making adjustments on your cardboard little by little, checking fitment every time. And then once you get the perfect cutout of this area here with your cardboard, then we'll be ready to go ahead to go to the sheet metal and trace our design onto the sheet metal. Okay, once you already achieve the cut that you're gonna need, go ahead and fit it in there, and then just go ahead and refold it. So just get it and just kind of push the paper in until you get like a nice little clean edge here, because actually that's where our heat roller is gonna sit, and we'll probably, you know, extend the paper just a little bit more up here, but right now it looks like it's gonna be a good fit. So all next we're gonna do is we're just gonna trim a little bit here on these areas, so that way it kind of fits with this angles here of the gas tank. But for now it's looking good over here on the inner part. See if I could get a better angle for you guys. So as you see inside there, it actually fits really nicely with the way I've already trimmed the cardboard. So our little sample cardboard fits in there nicely. Then next we're gonna put our little hole so we can put our screw through it. Again, this is just our template. So when we go to put our template over our 16 gauge steel plate, you can just go ahead, trace it, and then do our cutting. Okay, so now let's get our heat roller and put it against here, and just to get a good idea on how the fitment's going to be. Okay, so now that we got our heat roller here, just go ahead and alongside there, put it on there. So let's see, I think we're gonna have to push in the cardboard just a little bit more, just because as you can see, it's actually pushing in a little bit, the cardboard in a little bit more. So we wanna make sure that we have a surface for this heat roller to go on, and I'm just gonna give it a press to see if I could get a good crease on the cardboard, so we know exactly where this heat roller is sitting. So as you can see, I already pressed it hard enough, and as you could see, here's the crease on the cardboard. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to just I guess see if we could just push that in a little bit more, just go up a little bit more and make our adjustment, and then test it out all over again and see how it sits again before we do our final adjustment on this cardboard. Okay, after doing a little bit more trimming, I refolded it over here. So now as you can see, this is the new fold. It was folded up here before, but now it's here. I already trimmed it alongside the edges here on both sides. So now let's go ahead and put our paper there to see how it's going to fit. So far it looks like it's good at the middle there, and now it's more indentated inside there. Now let's grab our heat roller and check fitment again. Put the heat roller there, and that looks about right on where it's actually sitting. So, but I do see a curvature on the cardboard on this side, so I'm not too sure it's because it's still too wide. So let me show you what I'm looking at on this other side. So from this side, as you could see, when I press in the heat roller, you could see the cardboard actually folding in. So we know that when we put our metal, if we do it on the metal, we know that we're not going to get that flex. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to trim a little bit on the edges, so when we put the heat roller on there, we don't get that flex on the paper. Okay, I already put the paper back on there, put the heat roller. Now as you can see, when I press it, there is no flex. That's just pretty much the curvature of the paper. So as I'm pressing, you don't see that it's flexing anymore. So now we know we already cut good enough amount of size on the paper, and it should work perfectly when we go to make our template onto the sheet metal. So now that we know we got our fitment is good, and we know that it looks like it's going to work. Let's grab our little cardboard template. Let's take it over to the sheet metal and trace out the design. And it looks like this, I will measure it so I could show you the exact measurement of this little sheet of paper that I'm using. So when you do it, you know how much, you know, what to use. Let's go ahead and put the ruler to it, and then I will show you how long you're gonna need. So when we put it on the sheet metal, we're actually gonna put it out like that and then trace out the whole design, and then we're gonna make a line for where we need to actually bend the metal. Okay, so the measurements of our little template here, if we measure across, it's going to be just a little bit under 2 inches. So there's our measurements across, and then lengthwise it's going to be 3.5 inches. And then the distance between the edge here and the fold where we're going to be bending the metal will be exactly 1 inch. So if we were to fold it right there and then put it right against that, it's 1 inch. So from there, that's the distance we're going to be needing to fold it from. So those are the measurements for our template here. And like I said, for this part, you're actually going to have to do it on your own to get the proper little distance here. But I could also do it with the ruler here, but it's not going to be exact. So from there to there, it's approximately 2 inches. And then as you could see, as we go down up to this point, up to the point right here, this part right here is 1/2 inch. So those are the measurements. Okay, so now let's go to over to our sheet metal, and let's trace out this template onto the sheet metal. You're also going to need a table vise because we're going to be bending sheet metal for our project. Okay, so I have a piece of leftover material, sheet metal, that I had from a different project. So we're going to be using this piece instead of that whole big sheet metal that I showed you at the beginning. So it's cut from the same piece of metal as that I was doing from a different project. I just had this one laying around, which was perfect because this one is going to be a lot smaller and I could reuse this. Okay, so now we're going to trace out our template now. So I'm just going to start off with the edge right around here. If you could find any, instead of cutting here in the middle, I always try to go alongside edges, because then we use less amount of material. And actually I'll probably go right here to minimize on waste. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use this area. And what we're going to do right now is we're just going to trace our template. So then you just go grab your marker, make sure you press it especially at the edges because you don't want the marker to go underneath your template. And there we go. So there's going to be our template, and then I'm just going to give a little marking across on where we're going to be doing our bend. So I'm just going to put right there, make a little arrow there, and that's going to indicate where we need to bend the sheet metal so we could get this little lip like this. Also, I think I need to go back, and we actually need to make the little hole, so I can make the hole over here a marking so we could drill our hole. So what we're going to do right now, actually, we're going to grab our template cardboard. We're going to put it right back here because we need to make the marking for the hole. So when we do the template on the sheet metal, we're able to do the hole also. So just going to go ahead and put our template back there. Going to grab an X-Acto knife. Be careful with the point. You don't want to stab yourself. And then we're just going to eyeball it on where the hole is going to be. Puncture a little small hole and then see if it lines up with the hole underneath. If it does, we're just going to make the hole just a little bit bigger. And then make sure we put our bolt through it and make sure everything's okay. And then we're going to go back to our sheet metal and make sure that we make that little marking for the hole, and then drill the hole in the sheet metal for our bolt. Now that we traced out from our template, we went back to the bike because I forgot to do the hole for the bolt. Now that we made our hole, when you do the hole, try to do it cut in there to make sure that you have the right diameter. So now we got to make sure we line it up to our previous markings for the template. Once you get it lined up like so, just go ahead and just darken up the hole. Color it in. Alright, once you color it in, there you go. Now you know where the marking for the drill is going to go, so we could put the screw through that. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to grab our Dremel tool with the cutting wheel, and we're going to go ahead and cut our template out, and then we're going to take our piece over to the table vise and start putting our bend into the sheet metal. Okay, you're also going to need a drill with a 1/4 drill bit and a Dremel cutting wheel with the metal reinforced cutting wheel. If you're wanting to know what type of cutting wheels I'm using, it's these kind. This is the style of cutting wheel I'm using. It's made for metal, and I'm using it with the little easy lock twist thing. That way it makes changing the little cutting wheels a little bit more easier. Okay, next I'm going to use my table vise that's on the ceiling, so I'm going to call it my ceiling vise, and we're going to grab our metal plate with our trace of our template, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put it on here like so, probably right around there, and then I'm going to clamp it down. Once you get it on tight on there, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to drill our hole. Get our hole drilled in first. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and cut our template out with the Dremel tool. Okay, once you drill the hole for where the screw is going to go, make sure that the screw will be able to go through it. So grab your screw, and then I'll just show you from the other side. Just make sure that it passes through with no problem. So it passes through with no problem, and at the same time, it's not cut too big. So you see both sides, it fits in there perfectly. Okay, so next we're going to do is we're going to cut along the edges with our Dremel tool using the cutting wheel and cutting our template out. Don't forget to wear your safety glasses when doing the cutting, because sparks can fly from the sheet metal. You definitely don't want any sparks to fly into your eyes. Along with the Dremel tool, you're going to also need a sanding wheel for the Dremel tool to clear out the edges of the metal once we cut it. Okay, once we're done cutting our sheet metal and bending it, here it is. Now we want to make sure we check on fitment on the bike. So let's go ahead and we'll just put it on there. Looks like the hole is just a little bit off, just because we need to cut a little bit more on the edges of the metal, and then it should line up perfectly. And then we're gonna have to bend this metal a little bit more closer towards the gas tank, because like this it's not gonna fit. So we got to make sure we have it as close as to think like so. And so let's go back and let's Dremel out on the edges with the sanding wheel and soften it up and check again for fitment. Okay, after you sand off the edges a little bit, let's go check for fitment again. As you can see, I did quite an extensive amount of sanding to kind of get it more of a rounder edge. I also decided to round off the points so there's no sharp edges on this metal plate. So let's check it out. It looks a lot better now. So let me show you a different angle. So as you see, it looks a lot better. Now all we need to do is we need to push this metal, bend it a little bit more so it's more closer toward the edge here. And if you're wondering, once we push this metal, how we're going to put our screw in, don't worry, we'll be able to flex it just a little bit to get the bolt in, and then it should be no problem. So we're going to try to push it as far as we can, but still to have enough space to put our bolt and to actually get the tool so we could actually screw down the bolt. Okay, now let's check fitment again, but this time we're going to put our bolt through the bracket. We're not going to tighten down the screw, we're just going to make sure that everything's lined up pretty well. So let's go ahead and put that in there now. It fits perfectly on there now. So let's grab our heat roller and then just make sure we check on fitment there. So far it's looking great. It's almost like I made this, I mean, it's like the bracket came from a shop or something. It's fitting really good. Alright, so let's turn the steering wheel here. Oh, actually, never mind. It was just my mistake. I guess I didn't put it flush mount to the thing here. So, nope, no issue. All right, so now we're going to turn our steering wheel to the other side. Okay, so now let's turn the steering to the other side to make sure everything's good. And it looks good too. So far, it's working out good. I think there's a little bit of touching, but just because I think we haven't actually tightened down the bolt and making sure that the bracket is really on there. So, but other than that, I think as soon as we tighten down that bolt, I think it should be fine. So as soon as we tighten down the bolt, it should be fine. I don't think there's going to be any issues. All right, so let's go ahead and let's well, first off, let's paint our bracket. We're gonna paint it black. Well, we don't really have to, we're not gonna paint this side of the bracket because that's where we're gonna put our heat roller. So, and I don't think we're gonna be putting that Velcro because I think it's just gonna it's gonna be too thick. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the shoe-goo, or we're gonna use actually epoxy. We're gonna glue it on there, and yeah, I think we're gonna go that direction. So we're gonna use the shoe-goo, and we're going to put it on there, and but we're gonna paint this side, the opposite side over here, with the plasti dip, so that way we don't really see it. We'll probably paint the top edge over here too. And also, I don't want this plastic part to get scratched, so I'm also gonna put maybe some electrical tape on the edges of where this bracket's going to be, and maybe also put some electrical tape on the bracket itself. That way it doesn't scratch up all this area over here. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I have a torpedo heater, and I'm actually using it to heat up the can of paint. And if you're wondering why, if you were to spray paint and it's kind of like chilly out, or you know, to get more even coats instead of speckles when you spray paint, you should at least put it at least 6 inches away from the heater and do this turning motion as you're warming up the can. And then after that, shake the can because it's going to get really hot. So you want to make sure that you're not concentrated only in one area. So shake the can, make sure it will cool down as soon as you shake it, and then turn it around and do the same procedure all over again by spinning it, you know, turning those motions, and then shaking the can. You're actually gonna even out the paint inside, and it's going to come out a lot more even when you spray the surface of the sheet metal. Okay, now I have my sheet metal on a paper towel, and I'm just going to go ahead and spray paint the inside part of the sheet metal, but just on the inside. We're not going to spray this side or the other side. It's just going to be this side area, like this flat piece and this piece right here where the hole is going to be. Those are the two areas we're going to spray paint. Okay, so here's our first coat, and as you can see, by doing the heating technique, the spray comes out very even, and you're able to spray paint pretty much the whole area on one shot. So we're going to give it a little time to dry, and then we're going to spray a few more coats, and then that should be it for that. Then we're going to put it and install it on the bike. Okay, now before we put our bracket, as you can see, I did put some electrical tape just on this side around the edge here, and the same thing on the other side. So this side and this side is the same. Then a little piece on the bottom. Reason is just that I don't want that metal to scrape up the plastic, because when I remove it for the summertime, I don't want it to look all scratched up. Okay, so now let's grab our bracket. Here it is. The paint job came out very nice. So as you can see, the paint job came out very nice. After we heated up the can, the spray paint came out very even. Now if you're wondering about that, that's just a scratch mark from when I was cutting the metal. But other than that, everything came out nice and smooth. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our screw. So let's grab our bracket, grab our screw. So let's put the screw into the bracket and put it right into the spot where it was meant to go. We're going to grab our 5mm hex key, or Allen key, however you want to call it. Go ahead and put it in there, and then we're just going to start tightening down the bolt. You want to make sure that it's in there evenly. Once it's in there evenly, that's when we're going to tighten down the screw. Okay, as you can see, we lost our little bit in there. Just going to go back in there, push the metal out a little bit, and grab our Allen key. If I'm not able to get it, I'm just going to use some needle nose pliers to grab it out. Okay, I already got my Allen bit out with the needle nose pliers, and it's looking really good here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our epoxy here, which what we have here is called shoe-goo. Shoe-goo is a pretty good epoxy to use, pretty much what I use for almost all my installations. Not all of them, but anything that I would need for epoxy. It holds really good, and if you ever need to remove it, it comes out pretty well with a plastic pry tool. So nothing's ever permanent what I do on my videos, just in case you do need to remove them, but it does a good job on holding it in place until you do need to remove it, or for any reason. Okay, so now we're going to grab our heat roller right here, and we're going to grab also one zip tie, because we are going to use the shoe-goo on here. We want to make sure we have a good bond on there, and we're probably going to leave this overnight on the bike, but I want to make sure that it's on there really good, and it's not going to create some kind of pocket. If we leave it, chances are it's just going to start coming off like so, and I want it to be really on there, so I just want to make sure there's no pocket of in between the metal and our heat roller. Okay, so let's grab our shoe-goo. We're not gonna put a whole bunch on there, but we are gonna put it along the edge right here. So just right over here, because as soon as we put it on the bracket and we press on it, it's actually gonna start spreading out. So it should give it a good even amount of coverage. So here we are. Let's see how we're gonna do this here. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, so let's just go ahead and go pretty much the perimeter of the heat roller. Like I say, you just want to go on the inside of the heat roller, putting the epoxy. Make sure you put a nice thin, somewhat not too thick, but yet not too thin of a layer. I think that's about good enough. Put that much on there, and like I said, as soon as you put it onto the bracket, it's going to start spreading out a little bit more and covering the rest of the heat roller. Okay, so before we put our heat roller onto the bike, we're going to grab one zip tie. Put it off to the side for now. Grab our zip tie, and we're going to put it over through the back of the bracket. Lift it up just a little bit so that way we could slide our zip tie. Okay, so now that we have it there, now let's grab our heat roller, put it in like so, make sure the wires are down, and make sure you have it all the way seated to the bottom. Once you have it seated to the bottom, you go ahead and press your heat roller against the bracket, giving it a good firm press. Maybe shake it a little or move it side to side a little bit. That way the shoe-goo could start spreading out at the edges of the heat roller. Once you see that there's no gap between the metal and the heat roller, that's when you want to put your zip tie. Just gonna give it a nice firm press again, moving it side to side a little bit just to get the even disbursement of the shoe-goo to the metal and the heat roller. Okay, so that's I think it's good enough. So now I'm going to tighten down the zip tie. Move this off to the side a little bit. and just make sure it has a good tight bond and make sure it's actually on there tight. Okay, and it looks pretty centered, I would say. If not, I'm just going to tighten it down just a little bit more. Therefore, it is centered. And if anything, if you want to put another zip tie, you could now be the chance to do so. So that way, if you feel like it's going to move anywhere with 2 zip ties, I'm sure it will not move anywhere. So I'll probably move this one to this side and just put it off to the side here. Make sure it's where you want it, and then just go ahead and tighten down the zip tie. And if you have some needle nose pliers, or any pliers for that matter, the trick would be is to get the needle nose pliers and grab the edge, pretty much grab the edge with the needle nose pliers, pull it out, and then with your finger push the little square in more. And this will allow you to squeeze a few more clicks in to get it more tight. Okay, so now we got our heat roller in on our bracket. Let me check on clearance here. So once the glue should set, it should be on there pretty well. Oh, sorry for moving the camera there. Alright, so for now, we're just going to let that sit overnight, let the glue dry completely. Okay, so we're going to leave that there. Has 2 zip ties on there for now, and we're just going to let that sit overnight. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to get over to our power plug, and we're going to solder that new connector plug to the power plug. Okay, here's going to be the tools that you're going to need if you are just going to install it the stock way. You're going to need a 4mm Allen key for your 2 bolts here. In my case, I have it with a Phillips screwdriver. That's why this is here. Then you're going to need a ratchet with a 10mm socket and your Yamaha key to take out the rear seat. Also, if you're going to be using these kind of bits, don't forget your handle to use your bits for the Allen key. Okay, now that we're going into this part of the installation, I'm going to show you 2 ways on how to do it for the power. So the first way is going to be stock way, the way that it comes straight from the package with these 2 circle connectors on it. That's going to go straight to the battery. And then all we're going to do is we're going to run our cable, and this is going to be the adapter that goes to the heat roller. So you would just take out this little rubber garment, plug in your power, and there you have it. And then once you're done, if you want to take out the heat roller from your bike, and you could also just leave this on the bike at all times. So then you just unplug the other part off and put the heat roller away for the summer. Then just put this little rubber grommet, and it protects the inside of the connector from corrosion. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is if you have, like I said, if you have a battery tender, you're going to have this cable already on your bike. So this is going to be the adapter that we're going to use. And as you can see, I already stripped the cables. Going to cut these cables off, and we're going to solder the connector from here. So it'd be something sort of like this. You know, as soon as when we splice and solder the connections and then heat shrink the tubing, use a heat shrink tubing, and then we're just going to use this connector and connect it from this side. And then when we're not going to be using it anymore, same thing, we will just take out this whole cable system off of the bike for the summertime and only use it when it's cold out in the wintertime. So that's going to be another thing. So we'll pretty much be eliminating all this wire, including the heat roller, away from the bike when the summertime hits. There's going to be the 2 ways. So right now I'm going to show you the stock way of connecting the power cable to the bike. So first things first, we're going to grab our Yamaha key, and we're going to take out our passenger side seat. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, once we remove our seat and we put it off to the side, next we're going to take out these 2 screws. On your R3, it's going to be a 4mm Allen screw that's going to be in here. So that's what you're going to use to take out these bolts. On my bike, I'm going to be using a Phillips head screwdriver to take out these. That's what I have on my bike. Once you take out the screws, just be careful on taking out the plastic. Take it out, just push on the side outwards, and then just pull the plastic out. You want to do that for both sides. So we'll remove that. Okay, next thing we're going to do, we'll move this out of the way. Now we're going to get our ratchet, and we're going to take out these 2 bolts that are holding down the seat, and that's going to be a 10mm. Okay, it's not a 10mm. It's an actual 8mm socket, and we're going to go ahead and take out these 2 bolts. Okay, now that you remove the 2 bolts, go ahead and just remove your seat right out of the way. Okay, so next, now we're going to have access to our battery. Okay, so next what you're going to do is you're going to remove your screw with the 8mm socket, and this side's the negative, this side's the positive. but this is just for demonstration purposes. I'm not going to remove it because, as you can see, I have a ton of cables here, and that's the reason on why I'm doing it a different way. But for your bike, you may not have all of these cables here. On yours, you may just have a few on the battery post. So once you take out the screw from the battery, negative, so then what you would do is you would take out the screw, then put the screw into here, and then replace it and put it right back into the battery post terminal, and then tighten it back down. Once you tighten that one down, you do the same thing with the positive. By removing the bolt here, remove it completely, and then put the bolt right through the little hole here, and then put it back onto the battery, and then tighten down the bolt. So once you have it on here, we'll just put it in here just for demonstration purposes. So now that you have your connectors already plugged in and tightened down, so the next we're going to do is we're going to route the cable. So we want to make sure that we route the cable towards the front of the bike, and that's where we're going to have our connected to the heat roller. So just go ahead and just tuck the cables neatly around this area, and then next what we're going to do is we're going to remove the side panel here, so that way we could get easier access on tucking the cables for bike. Okay, to remove this panel here, it's going to be a 4mm hex screw that's going to go in here, and it's 2 screws. Okay, now with the panel removed, now we could actually have a little bit easier time on wiring the cable. And at this point, you could also use some extra zip ties to hold the cable in place while you run the cable where you need to run it. So we're just going to go ahead and tuck it through here. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to remove this panel so you could get access to this area. But as you could see, you get pretty much the idea of where the cable is going to go. So we'll just stick it there. So once you connect the heat roller, what you're going to do is grab the power cable for the heat roller, which is not that one, but this one. These two are going to go for your garments, either the jacket or pants or whichever color you choose to connect those. But here is your positive cable from the heat roller, and here's the part where you're going to connect it to the battery. So all you would have to do is remove the little rubber grommet and then plug it like so. Now you got power for your heat roller, and you have power to heat up your pants and your jacket and gloves if you have the glove. So everything will be all connected. Now you have power. Now you just use so now you would just go over there and just turn the knob on either for jacket or pants or both, and control it there. And then once you're done for the winter, or when the cold season is already done, and then you just want to remove this device, now all you have to do is just go ahead and unplug it from here, and then you could remove the system completely, and then only this part will remain on the bike, but from the inside. So then you would just before you do that, you just put the rubber thing on there, and then you'll have everything just tucked away, and then you don't have to worry about it until the next cold season begins again. But for me, I'm just going to go a different route, but that's how you pretty much would do it if you were to do it the stock way. Next, I'm going to show you how to do it a different way, and this is going to be using that different type of connector. Okay, so now for this part of the installation, to install a different style connector to your heat roller power cord, what we're going to do, if you happen to have red heat shrink tubing, you should use it on this part of the install. But unfortunately, I don't have red heat shrink tubing, so all I have is only the black ones. But just note that the side with the fuse is the power. So you just want to make sure that you remember that the side with the fuse in it is going to be your power, your positive cable. So, and then the one without it is just negative. Okay, so first things first, what we're going to do is we are going to cut our, we'll start off with the negative. So I'm going to cut, let's see, try to make it even here. So let's see, so I'm going to probably cut around here. Reason I'm going to cut around here is just in case I want to reuse these cables. The connectors are really good, so I may have a different project for these, but so that's why I'm going to cut over here. If you're not ever planning to use these, you could just cut over here at the end and then just, splice it from there. But I always like to reuse things. I always find a purpose for reusing other things if I'm able to for another project. Let's just go ahead and I'll give me enough if I ever need to splice it. So we're just going to go ahead and cut both of them. Now that we have cut in both, now we're going to get our wire splicers, and we're going to splice on the positive, which is the one with the fuse, and we're just going to go ahead and splice some cable. Just want to make sure you grab enough, that way you could intertwine both of these cables together. And then you want to do the same thing with the other one. You want to make sure you get an even amount. I usually like to put it together as so, and then put it into the wire splicers, that way I know I got, or at least close to. That looks about close. Then make sure you twist the cables. Once you get them twisted, next what we're going to do is we're going to put these two cables together. Now if you're not sure on which one is the positive and which one is negative, there is a few ways of doing it. You could actually plug this to your bike and then use a voltmeter to check which is positive and which is negative. But I already did that, so I'll tell you which one is positive and which one is negative. Okay, so just letting you know that the cable with the white stripe is negative, and then the all black one is positive. We're gonna first start off with our negative. We'll go with the negative to start off with. Okay, so but before we put our cables together, we need to get some heat shrink tubing. If you don't have any heat shrink tubing, you could use electrical tape. But I have heat shrink tubing, so that's what we're gonna use. All right, so the heat shrink tubing I'm gonna use is gonna be a 1/8 inch diameter heat shrink tubing. Make them even, and then just cut evenly. So we will start with the negative. So the negative is the one with the stripe, and the negative on this side is just the one without the fuse. So let's go ahead and slide our heat shrink tubing on this one, because it actually will be able to push the heat shrink tubing all the way at the end, so we don't have to worry about it shrinking. Next, we're gonna grab our two cables and we're gonna make an X. And then we're going to fold, closer shot for you guys. All right, so we're gonna make an X, and then we are going to fold one, and then we'll fold the other one, and then we're gonna twist them like so, like intertwine the cables together. Because when we solder it, that's gonna give us the best style connection, and it's gonna be nice and tight. And as you can see, it's in line, and there's no twist of the top or anything. And then we'll be able to slip our heat shrink tubing over this. So after we intertwine our cables together, now we're gonna get a little bit of some solder paste, and we're gonna put a little solder paste there. That's gonna help with the solder. So I got a little bit of solder paste on here. Let's just put a little bit of solder paste along the wires. Doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. It's just gonna let the solder adhere to the metal nicely. Okay, so now that we got the solder paste on there, now we're gonna grab our solder, and we're gonna get our soldering gun, and then we are just going to go ahead and solder this connector. Make sure that you put that heat shrink tubing as far away as this area as possible, because if not, once you start soldering away, it's going to actually heat shrink. It's going to actually shrink the tubing, and it's going to be a lot more difficult on putting it over the connector. So as you could see, when we touch that solder paste, it actually evaporates right away, but now it's left it with, so we could melt the solder nice and even over the connector. So there we go. It's a nice good solder connection going on right there. There's a close-up right there. I think I'll get you a better close-up in a second. So there's our soldered connection. As you can see, it's nice and solid, and it's not going to come apart anytime soon. Okay, so now what you could do is just slide over your heat shrink tubing and just slide it right over the connector, like so. Once you get it over the connector, now you could get a lighter and then just heat the tube, and it'll just shrink right over the soldered area. Okay, now that we've done that, now next we're going to do the same with the positive. You know it's positive because it has the fuse on this side, and then on this side it's just pretty much the all black wire is the positive for this connector. So same thing, we're going to make an X, and then we're going to fold one over the other. So fold this one over that side, the other one fold over this side, and then just kind of intertwine the cables together. Make sure it's nice and tight. Then put a little paste flux, and then solder the connector. Okay, as I messed up, I forgot to put the heat shrink tubing, which is still right here. So I'm gonna undo this. Luckily I didn't solder the connection yet. So just pretty much just go backwards from what you did on making it pretty tight. At this point, since we did do it really well the first time, it gets kind of tricky to undo it. But it's possible, as long as you didn't solder the connection yet. Alright, so now that we undid it, let's make this straight. We already put the solder paste flux on it. I'm just going to pull a little bit of this wire out so we could put our heat shrink tubing through it. At this point, I think I will have to cut the heat shrink tubing because it is a little bit long, and I don't want it to shrink as we solder our connector. So I'm going to cut around there. Actually, cut probably right there. Oops, flying over there. Now that I cut a little bit, I'm just gonna go ahead and just slide it through as far as I can. probably open up this a little bit more and then slide it through some more. Alright, so like I said, we just want to make sure that the heat shrink tubing is as far away from our soldering connection as possible while we're putting the solder on. So same again, let's just make the X and then turn that one, and then just make sure that you do a corkscrew style connection. And since we still have our paste flux on there, we don't need to put any more. Now we'll go ahead and solder our connection. Okay, so now that we already have our connector onto our power cable for our heat roller, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cable through the frame of the bike and then connect it to the other part of the connector, which is right here. But at the same, we're going to get to this a little bit later, but for right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to put the cable in here. And so I'm going to undo this one screw so that way we could get our power cable through this side. And since it does have a wire tie here, I'm going to just reuse this wire tie. You could use zip ties if you like, or different type of cable ties. But for now, I'm just going to use this temporary one just to keep the cables kind of together a little bit. But you could use this, or you could use the zip tie or cable, or the other type of cable tie. So I'm just going to go ahead and take out that. That's going to be a 4mm hex key or Allen key. And then also don't forget there's a little plastic piece which uses a Phillips screwdriver. Put it in there, give it a small turn. If you want to just hold that part and it should just come out. Once it pops out, you could just go ahead and take the whole thing out. So that's going to allow us and give us access to this panel here. We don't have to really take out the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is just going to grab the cable and just fish it through the side here. So I just pull it through, so like so. And then that's all we need to do really. So that's the whole reason, just to take out that screw, just to give us a little bit of a leeway on getting that cable in like so. These two cables are going to go to the other side, but we're not going to worry about that now because that's still drying. So now that we have our power cable here on this side, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our cable here and let's see, let's go ahead and plug it in so that way we know how much cable we have to work with. At this point, I'm not exactly sure. Oh, here it is. Here's the temporary cable tie that I got. And we're just going to kind of just get the cable and just make it as minimal as possible. We don't need that much going all over the place. So I think that should be enough right about there, because this one goes right here, so that should be good enough. So I'm just going to wrap it. Now I'm just going to get this temporary cable tie, use it to put these two cables together, all these cables together. So I'm just going to twist it and then put it like so. You could use that, or you could actually use a zip tie to put the cables together like so, however you want to do it. And for now, I'm just going to keep it right there. It's almost going to be springtime, so we don't have that much more cold, wet weather left. So, but if this was going to be the beginning of winter time, and then I would go ahead and just put this in a better area with a zip tie, so that way the cables are not just going all over the place. Going to make sure that there's nothing in its way. And it looks to be in a safe area there. Okay, so now that I have the cables there in a good safe area, now I'm going to go ahead and put that little plastic piece here and put this other screw back over here. Okay, so now that we got those two screws there, next we're going to put our little triangle piece over here. At the same time, you want to make sure you have the cable out, because I have my cable out like so. So I just want to make sure that this one's out, like in this area, so I can just plug it in. Yep, that should be good enough. So I'm just going to have it sticking out like so. So when I'm not using it, I can just tuck it in and it's going to disappear. You won't even see it. So this one's out like that. Now just put the screws right back over here. Okay, so now the triangle piece is back on. Let's grab our seat and put our seat back on. At this point, we could probably just go ahead and make sure you got the cable tucked nice there. Everything's looking good. Now let's put our 2 bolts back on for our seat. Okay, now that we already put our seat back, now we're going to put that little plastic piece that goes right over here. So when you put that in, make sure you put that over there, and then to snap it back, just pull a little bit towards you on this one, and then push that in, and then push it away from you, push that in, and now you're set. Now you could go ahead and put your 2 screws in and tighten that back up. And then lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to put our seat back on. So just go ahead and put your seat back into its spot. Alright, so now let's test our connection and make sure that the heat roller is getting some power. Alright, so now to connect the heat roller, and then grab our connector and just go ahead and plug that in. Once we have it plugged in, now I'm just going to go ahead and tuck the cable inside here which is pretty much a perfect spot for the cable of this type to be tucked in. So now it's away, as when you ride your bike now, it's away from, you know, there's no obstruction. So that's a nice little area for the wire to be. So now let's go to our heat troller and turn it on and see there's power. Okay, so here's our heat troller. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn on the switch. You can see there's power going there. Now let's turn on the other one. Now you can see that there's power going to both. When you turn off the red one, the red light goes off. Now it's only the yellow one. Turn off the yellow one goes off. Yellow on, yellow off, red one on, red one off. Okay, so now we know that there is power going to the heat troller. So next, pretty much all you're gonna need to do is now just plug in your garments to your heat troller and you're gonna be all set. Then now you can enjoy a nice comfortable ride, even if it's cold, even if it's in the 50s, 40s. I would say 40s will be a good amount. You probably could even ride in the 30s. If it's in the 30s, you probably could ride still nice and comfortable with your heated gear. Also, I'll have a link in the description below on where I purchased this heat troller from. And also, I'll have all the heated gear, even the garments that I did not buy. So don't forget to check that out. So that way you guys could ride in nice, warm, heated clothing. So if you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, please like, hit that subscribe. Don't forget to check out the next video showing on how to plug in your heated gear to the heat troller. And thank you for watching.